Okay, so last week, Digital Foundry posted its Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I think that's right.
Yeah, that's
Well
it.
done.
Yep.
I was just thinking suddenly of Thousand Yard Stairs for some reason. Posted our review, generally quite positive. There's still a good degree of discussion about the fact that a 60 FPS GameCube game runs at 30 FPS on Nintendo Switch, which is like several generations beyond, and decades on indeed. Tom, you wanted to talk about this because I'm looking at the docket here, and you've got various discussion points that have cropped up in the wake of the release of the game.
Yeah, 3 discussion points. One which stems from, or 2 in fact, which stem from data mines of the game. Now it's fully released and something we could not do. And the perennial source, Oatmeal Dome, on Twitter, has surfaced some interesting details about the engine that it's using. It's using the same engine as Paper Mario: The Origami King, which just, as a clarification to the review I did last week, it's for sure a remake in that case. It goes to a fundamental point of the game design where everything is rewritten and new assets are made, and they've pretty much built it from scratch. So it's a quite an incredible project, more incredible than I maybe gave it credit for in the tech analysis, but it's... And also, interestingly, scouring the Reset Era forums, there's people who've unlocked in the art gallery. There's unlockables as you play the game, concept art from early builds, and they have Mario in looking. Well, the design of Mario is similar to what it was in the Origami King. So they originally had a kind of an art style with a different colored border around Mario, and the art style was more similar to that more recent game. So they clearly backtracked on that and made it a bit more distinctive to kind of make it stand out. So that's kind of point 1. I don't know if you have any comments on that, it being based on that engine.
Well, there's a lot of sort of contention about what the nature of the game actually was, wasn't it? The Nintendo itself was kind of like sitting on the fence almost, in the fact it didn't refer to it as either a remake or a remaster, which I find quite fascinating.
Did they do that for the Metroid Prime remaster? Did they call it a remaster for Switch, or was it just Metroid Prime on Switch? I'm trying to remember.
Well, we can do a quick Google, can't we?
Yeah. It seems to me like they might be a bit averse to that as a marketing thing, and they just want it to be presented as what it is.
They did just call it Metroid Prime Remastered.
Okay, cool. So not this time, apparently, but... They really did. I looked everywhere through the press releases and thought, well, they really don't want to... I would have thought being called a remake would have advertised it more in a weird way, but...
I mean, it looks like a remake fundamentally, doesn't it? Because the graphics, fidelity, quality, everything has just been radically improved, which kind of is the form of the justification for why it's a 30 FPS game.
It's true. Yeah, very true. So I guess point 2, we'll go to the other data mine point, which is that a line code has been discovered by Ribshark on Twitter about it running at 4K, or there's an option to run at 4K. And we discussed this on the Slack, and there's all sorts of reasons why a 4K option would be there. The most exciting one, obviously, being a Switch successor, but it could be used for anything like publicity shots. So, there's potential there. And
I guess my point would be, it's great to see that this sort of resolution is mentioned in the code, but has anyone actually managed to actually engage it? Does it work? Because, there's a lot of things that can just be in there, possibly for debugging purposes or, as you say, for bullshot production. And we've certainly seen some of that on Nintendo games. I mean, there's some Animal Crossing screenshots that came out with like phenomenally large resolutions.
It's also not a native 1080p game, right? So
it's true.
And they have 1080p in there, which makes me think it's more like a potentially useful in the future kind of front buffer thing, where they're just like, okay, depending on which display is attached, 720 for handheld, 1080p for Switch, and then if for instance, this new machine is available, it could say, okay, set the front buffer to 4K. And it doesn't actually have anything to do with the rendering resolution, just the final output.
That rings more true. Looking at the screenshot, there's no mention of 900p or like, what would be the scale, 83% of 1080p. There's no mention of that. So, yeah, that's kind of where that is. Something to bear in mind. But the final point was that, of course, people have run this game with modified switches, and they've got it running at 60 frames per second with variable results. You found this YouTube video of it running kind of mostly at 60, but with dips to 40 FPS, 45 FPS in the first hub area, Rogue port, which was, we don't know whether this capture is on stock clocks or if it's overclocked. You'd maybe hope that it would be just stock clocks and that you can overclock it to get better. But yeah, it shows perhaps why they didn't. They just settled for the 30 FPS cap, and it does have a similar sort of range to the Super Mario RPG remake. Even John looked at.
Oh yeah.
Where you kind of the justification there at the end of my video was, well, in an alternate scenario we would have had that situation with a lot of panning motion at 40 to 60 at points. So maybe the 30 FPS cap was the wiser choice, but I'm kind of loath to say that.
Well, we got this interesting question from supporter 1040 STF. If we trust some reliable sources of leaks, the Switch 2 was originally supposed to release in early 2024. Wouldn't the remake of Paper Mario have been one of its early launch titles then? Wouldn't that explain the 30 FPS cap on Switch? Well, I mean, possibly. John, did we ever hear anything about a release in early 2024? I seem to dimly recall.
Yes.
There was some panic from developers who just weren't ready.
Correct. We definitely heard a few things from different people that there was at least some sort of target they were working for in early 2024. Not necessarily hardware, but like, okay, we need to have such and such prepared for this around this time. But obviously nothing official was ever announced, discussed. And so it wasn't a quote unquote delay, right? Just the potentially plans shifted at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good reasons for that. But yeah, I mean, I do think we're probably going to be seeing sort of upgrade patches for Switch games
I'd
that
imagine
run on
so.
Switch 2. I mean, it's just logical. It just makes sense. When you look at the long tail of Nintendo Switch games, this is just another way to extend the lifespan of the existing library. I'm just kind of wondering how that strategy would sit with, Nintendo's proven track record of basically enhancing older games and bringing them to new systems. I guess they can't repeat the same trick that they had with Wii U titles appearing on Switch. But this is certainly some way to reignite interest in some legacy games. Anything more on this whole situation, Tom, or is that the full extent of it?
I think that is the full extent of it. Yeah, yeah. Interesting story though. I did. It's a great game and makes you wonder what it would have looked like. It will look like on Switch 2.